Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for High Velocity Radio.
Welcome to the High Velocity Radio Show, where we celebrate top performers producing better results in less time. Stone Payton here with you this afternoon. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast with Lauren Berlin, coaching and consulting, the lady herself, Miss Lauren Berlin. How are you?
Hi, Stone. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, I have really been looking forward to this conversation. Tons to talk about. I'm thinking a good place to start would be mission, purpose. What are you really out there trying to do for folks with your practice?
Yeah, my origin story really starts in a pool, and I grew up a competitive swimmer and lived a firsthand experience about how a coach can entirely change a trajectory for an athlete for better or for worse. And that contrast is something that really stuck with me as a coach now, not for athletes, but for, parents, for leaders, for executives. It's really about making sure that people can take themselves to that next level. You can't see the label of the jar that you're inside of, right? And so coaching is about getting that outside perspective. I really want people to be able to live into their full potential. And that is what a great coach does, helping them reach those places they can't reach alone. So that's why I do this work.
So what was it like in the early days, like the transition from what you were doing before to being a professional coach? It had to be, I would think, a little bit intimidating, a little bit scary, but maybe not for an athlete. I don't know.
No, it's scary every day. And I'm still very much, I think I approach life as a curious beginner. I think that's just sort of the nature of who I am. My background is in public education. That's where I started my career, and really believe that we're all lifelong learners and there's always something more to be curious about. That's how we improve every day. And so, I'm not sure if there's ever a day I don't feel like a beginner at something. And I'm here for that. Like, I really like to embrace that mindset. It really creates an opportunity for growth. And so that's something that I really embrace in my own life as a parent for my kids, and then also for the clients that I work with.
So what are you finding the most rewarding? What's the most fun about it these days for you?
Oh, it's pretty easy, right? That question is, when I'm working with a client and they have that moment where they've really put the pieces together about, a challenge that they had, why they felt stuck somewhere. And you can see it in their eyes, Stone. Like, they start to, like, they literally like light up, and like, I swear, in person or through the Zoom, I can see their eyes start to sparkle. And as a coach, like, that moment where you can see, like, they're leaving this session in a totally different place than they entered, and they have clarity about something really important for them. That's the moment. And that's what just keeps me coming back for more as a coach.
So I'm trying to envision the level of trust that you must have to endear in this relationship pretty quickly on to be of any real service. Is that something that came natural to you, or are there operational disciplines and tactics and mechanics to build trust? But I got to believe to sit down with a coach and open up enough to really be helped, you got to really trust the coach. Yeah.
Totally. Trust is the foundation for any good work in progress. Your question sort of makes me think of two things. One, a question I get asked a lot, which is, how do you know if you're considering working with a coach? How do you find a coach? And it's really because the trust starts there, right? It's in feeling like this coach they're gonna get me. Maybe they've been where I've been before, or maybe I just feel like a sense of connection with this person. One thing, you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to share it anyway,
Yeah.
that I really recommend to people is, if you're considering starting to work with a coach, go out and interview them, right? Ask for discovery calls or for chemistry calls. Every coach I know will do that. We do them for free because
Mm.
we want to be a fit for you, right? It's like just because you're a size 7 shoe doesn't mean that they're all going to feel good on your feet because they're your size, right? They might not be your style. They might not be the right color. And so it's really the same with a coach. You want to find somebody who is going to be a good fit for you. And that could be about vibe, about feel, about communication style. So part of the trust is in really starting with the right client and with the right coach. And from there, my clients like to do the big work, to do the deep work, you have to get really vulnerable. And so you build trust through really listening. I do a lot less talking when I'm with my clients than I am right now. And so it's a lot of listening and really for the purpose of seeking to understand where they are, not to judge, not to give them solutions, but really just to sit and hear them really process through what's going on for themselves. So I think when you're right with holding space with a person who's a good fit for you, and then creating these opportunities to allow them, to share this information, that bond and that connection just really start to build. But you're right, trust is a really key element to a coaching relationship.
Well, and I suppose as a client, it just occurred to me, I guess you got to kind of trust yourself too, right? That it's going to be, yeah.
Yeah, and to really, I think, be brave to put it all out there, to say the thing that, we all have those, whether it's like a limiting thought or a belief or whoever's that like little like Darth Vader voice on our shoulder, whoever that guy is or that gal is that, shares some of those negative messages that you hear in your head to say those out loud. Like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, or when I try to make a brave move or make a bold step, here's what I'm hearing. It takes courage to share that. And so I think you're right that for clients, being really vulnerable and opening us up, they have to trust themselves to do that too.
So let's dive into the work a little bit. Maybe you can paint a bit of a picture, maybe a use case. Of course, you wouldn't want to name names, but walk us through what that process looks like. I'm particularly interested personally in the front end of the process, but I bet our listeners would love to hear a little bit about how it unfolds as well.
Yeah, let me start, if it's okay, by because I think it's helpful, like what's a coach, what's a consultant,
Yeah,
what's a
yeah.
therapist, and sometimes people get a little confused in that space. And so one of the things I think it's really important to share, because I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that when you start working with a coach that, if you come to me, I'm a professional problem solver and like, here's going to be my 5-step plan to just fix everything. Or here's my like proprietary acronym program. And that's not at all what it is. So, um, for me specifically, and I'm trained by the Hudson Institute of Coaching, and I'm a credentialed coach through the International Coaching Federation. So I share that because it paints a picture sort of who I am as a coach. But before that, I'm an educational school psychologist. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst. So right. Every coach is going to bring their personality flavors into the work that they do with a client. So, to answer your question, for me and my approach, it's a little bit like having a behavior scientist and a coach in your corner at the same time. Um, I feel like I'm always digging a little deeper below the surface to really get into the why. And I'm really fascinated by that. I can give you an example. One of the things that I frame in my thinking is every behavior we have as humans serves a function. It's often that we're trying to escape something or we're trying to gain something, but our environment also plays a really big role in our successes or our challenges in meeting a goal. And so an example that I would give you, I'll just make this one up. It's not one of my real clients, but I think it's something that we can all connect with is the idea that like, I want to be doing more exercise, or I know that if I went on a walk or if I got out to the gym, that I would feel better, right? And yet I just can't leave the office on time because I keep getting stuck in a meeting and, oh, I had to send that one last email. And so I'm not getting out to the gym and like, oops, I've missed that class again. And so, I'll try again next week. Right. So that sort of cycle of like,
Mm.
set the goal, have these barriers, and then not meet the goal. What I would do, and as I was working with a client who was facing some concerns like that, it looks like a time management issue, right? But oftentimes, if you dig a little deeper, you can understand more what's happening. So maybe it's that this client is really socially motivated. And so it's hard for them to leave the office because they talk to everybody on the way out the door, or there's a standing meeting and they want to stay, they're engaged in that conversation. They like that, right? So it's like having those conversations, being engaged with their coworkers, their colleagues. That is a place that feels good to them. And going to the gym maybe doesn't feel as great. So something that we might explore is in manipulating maybe the timing, maybe the environment. So if that time is going to present a challenge, can that standing meeting move, or can the exercise time move? Also, if it's social and that's going to be really a pull or like a carrot for that person, can they set up a gym class with a friend or with a colleague or with a coworker where they go together? So if you pull some different threads to start to figure out what's really going into those barriers, it's probably not just about time management or boundaries. And how can we start to connect the dots and make some shifts within the environment that make it easier for that person to be successful in achieving that goal? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, that's very clear. So have you found yourself over the years gravitating to a certain type of client or industry or anything like that? Or is it pretty broad-based and agnostic?
I think it's like both things are true. um, I think what I find consistently, a thread I see with a lot of my clients is there's some kind of a limiting belief that's holding them back when we kind of get through to the root cause. So they've got this sort of like overactive security guard like getting in the way of their progress. Can you imagine it, right? Like I love a good visual. And so it's really, there's oftentimes like maybe a connection to perfectionism or a sense of like familial obligation or duty, that really makes it hard for my clients to prioritize themselves. I'm often seeing clients that are in that second act of life. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
seen Jane Fonda talking about a life in three
right,
acts, but
right.
in that messy middle stage, that 30 to 60. So a lot of my clients are, at that point where their careers are starting to really accelerate. And they're also maybe parents, becoming parents, or caregiving for their parents. So I do see a lot of clients like in that messy middle where they have some caregiver duties that they're trying to balance also while their jobs are really taking off. So it's a lot of my clients are in that sort of burning the candle at both ends phase, and dealing with a lot of transitions.
So have you had the opportunity, and as I'm framing this question, I'm thinking the answer is yes. So I'll ask you to speak to it, but I'll ask
Sure.
it anyway. Have you had the benefit of one or more mentors to help you kind of navigate that terrain of being in the coaching business and practicing the craft and then the whole business side of being in the coaching business?
Yes. um, when I think about mentors, I mean, I really do go all the way back to my competitive swimming days. I mean, I think of a coach I had through junior high and high school who I learned so much from about how to be a teammate, how to grow up as a teen, how to be a person, how to be an athlete. So, I mean, that's somebody who I think about a lot. And then as a business, learning all of this is new for me, right? Like how to be a business owner. So I have had and have some incredible mentors, who are helping with me learn like the marketing end of things, who are walking me through, I think it's like the tips and tricks, but also, I'm really looking to not learn. Here's what I want to say. It is really easy to be inundated with information right now, right? Like
Mm.
you can Google what are the top 5 marketing strategies, or you can ask Chat GPT, to write you a 4-quarter strategic plan for a new business. So there's a lot of tools and things out there. But for me, what's been really beneficial is reaching out directly to some of my mentors who've either been there or know me really well and can think about how do I do these things? How do I learn these things? How do I grow as a business and really stay authentic and true to myself? I'm not for everybody. No coach is. And so it's like, how do I find the right clients for me? Like we talked about that, making the shoe fit.
Yeah.
And really making sure that my message gets out there in an authentic way.
So at this point in your journey, how does the whole sales and marketing thing work? Like, how do you get the new business? Is it all referral based at this point, or do you still have to get out there and shake the trees a little bit like the rest of us?
Yes. Yes. I mean, a referral is great, right? Because those are the clients that I've served telling other people like,
Sure.
hey, this was a great experience. Reach out to her. I mean, so that is both. I mean, that's the biggest compliment there can be, right? Is that my services were so supportive and they met their goals to the extent that they want to tell other people. So that's amazing. And then yes, it's a lot of getting out there, making connections, thinking about where might the people be who that are in my second act of life, dealing with that messy middle. Where do I find them? How do they know that I exist? So it is lots of conversations, joining different groups, networking, and really trying to just meet folks through genuine and authentic connection.
And again, and I think you mentioned this earlier, you have those conversations and you may be able to serve in some way, even at that more superficial level, but it's important if you're going to do real work with them. I think was it you or someone else I talked to that talked about a chemistry call or a discovery call? You've really got to, that has to be there, or it's doesn't make either person a bad person, but it's not the right fit, right?
Exactly. And I mean, I think if you have, if there's potential coachees, potential clients on this call, one thing I would hope that they walk away with is knowing that like doing those chemistry calls or those discovery calls is really important. And it's okay to tell a coach, like, thank you, I don't feel like we're a fit. They want to know, like
Yeah.
I don't want to serve someone who doesn't feel like I'm a good match for them, because if they're showing up and at a place where they really feel like this is going to be good and important for their life stage, or to help them through or with whatever challenge they're facing, I want them to make that progress authentically. I'm a coach because I really believe in the power of transformation that this work does. And so if I'm not the right person for you, that is totally okay. And so it's okay to say like, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to pursue other options. No coach is going to fault you for saying that or whatever. I mean, if they do, that tells you something about the coach, is I guess what I would say.
No, I'm so glad that you articulated though that's very important. So what is next for you? Is there a book in you? Is there replicating the Lauren Berlin methodology and certifying other people to do, like on the horizon? Any designs on anything like that in terms of scaling, or you've kind of found your groove?
Right now, I send out a weekly newsletter. I love to just share, like bite-sized pieces of information. It might be a habit, a habit change suggestion. It might be sharing a story from my life, and an aha moment that I had and sharing that with my clients. So I send out a newsletter every week on Friday afternoons. That's called Inner Spark. And the hope is that it just sparks, it's a little tidbit. It's a little nugget. I like to share that, with my readers, with my audience. And I'm in the process of developing a digital course around habit change. So for folks who are maybe ready to, I used my story about the woman who just can't get to that gym class. And so for people who are maybe really thinking about a habit that they want to change, a new routine, a behavior that they, have been trying to to sort out and just can't get around the other side. I don't know, the way I think of it is they can't get out of their own way.
Right.
So I'm working on a digital course that would speak to someone in that situation so that they could really work through that course. So subscribing to my newsletter would also be the way to get any updates on that course when it's available. And probably in about a month and a half.
Oh, fantastic. So I'm going to switch gears. With your permission, I'm going to switch gears with you for a moment. Hobbies, interests, pursuits outside the scope of coaching. A lot of my listeners know that I like to hunt, fish, and travel. Anything you'd like to nerd out about that's outside the scope of this?
Yeah, cook, read, and travel. So
Ah,
those are my big three. I love to cook. It is a routine for me that's like really de-stressing at the end of the day. I'm looking at my cookbook collection, which is organized
mm.
in a rainbow order on my shelf over there. So that is something that really brings me joy. I am not a great cook, but I really enjoy to cook. And I read a lot. I read and I listen to audiobooks.
Ah.
But last year, I think I got through more than about 100 titles. So I love mystery thriller. I read some romance novels. I read a lot in business development, self-help.
Mm.
And listen to podcasts. So I consume a lot of content. And then travel is something I love to do.
Well, I have to believe that some of the travel inspires some of the cooking. Is that accurate?
Absolutely true. Yes. Absolutely. And it also inspires the future destination list, right? So travel
Yeah.
for food.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, before we wrap, I would love to leave our listeners with a couple of pro tips if we could. Just some things to be noodling on. Maybe it is a book, a good read that could stimulate and challenge their thinking. Maybe it's a do or don't you've learned from just living life, or maybe it's an idea for another practitioner in building their
Hmm.
business, or someone considering taking advantage of someone with specialized expertise in this domain. And look, gang, the number one pro tip is reach out and have a conversation with Lauren. That's your number one pro tip. But yeah, let's leave them with a little something to chew on.
I would love to. And I thought about this a little bit. What I want people to know is that change does not have to be overwhelming. And I want to put on my behavior analyst hat here and tell
Hmm.
you it's not about a massive overhaul. You do not have to reinvent yourself when you can start to understand the patterns and how making really small strategic shifts in your life that starts to create those ripples. That tiny change is that pebble in a pond, and the impact spreads. And so, whether that's me as a coach, if you need someone to help you find that right pebble to drop, I can be here for you. If you want to try some things yourself, give it a go. And it's okay if you miss it a day, forget, don't do it
Hmm.
the right way. Just taking any action moves you into action, and building that momentum is the most important part.
I am so glad I asked. That sounds like terrific counsel. All right, what's the best way for our listeners to stay connected, tap into your work, and maybe have a conversation with you at some point?
Yeah, you can find me at my website, which is my name, laurenberlincoaching.com. There's a link to subscribe to my newsletter in the header. It should be easy to find. So you can follow me there. And I think the other thing I would recommend, one of my favorite reads from last year's Stone, is The Five Resets by Dr. Aditi Nurukar. And it's really gets into some specific habit change for kind of the major issues that a lot of folks are facing. So it's a great read if folks are looking to dig a little deeper on habit change. The Five Resets is a book I would really highly recommend.
Yeah, and that website one more time?
LaurenBerlinCoaching.com.
What an absolute delight to visit with you on the broadcast this afternoon. This has been an inspiring, invigorating conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot. I know that our listeners have. You're clearly out there doing terrific work for some people that are truly benefiting. We sure appreciate you, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
My pleasure. All right, this is Stone Payton for our guest today, Lauren Berlin with Lauren Berlin Coaching and Consulting, and everyone here at the Business Radio X family saying we'll see you in the fast lane.